From WXXI News, this is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. Our connection this hour will be made on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2026. That's when the congressional midterm elections will be held. Democrats might wish that the midterms were next week, not next year. They are confident that the newly passed budget bill will remain so unpopular that they can take back control of the House, maybe by a big margin. But to do that, Democrats will have to hone a message, and they'll have to win in places that they lost in 2024, or in the case of my guest this hour, 2022. Back in 2022, Republican Claudia Tenney won by 31 points over Democrat Stephen Holden in Congressional District number 24 in this state. Holden is a retired U.S. Army lieutenant colonel who grew up on a dairy farm in Oklahoma, and he had hoped that his story might open some more Republican doors. But it didn't really happen. In fact, in the 2022 election, the 24th Congressional District voted more strongly Republican than any other district in the state, and it's a huge district. In the west, it starts north of Buffalo up against the lake. It moves southeast, picks up much of the Finger Lakes while avoiding Rochester to the north, and then juts up to Lake Ontario all the way to the Thousand Islands. Gerrymandering remains alive and well. But with the new budget bill and the big looming cuts to Medicaid and food stamps, Democrats see an opening in more rural districts like this one, even in the 24th Congressional District. So Stephen Holden is running again, and to win, he's going to have to solve some challenges. How can he reverse a 31-point blowout? Why do so many farmers and veterans love President Trump and vote Republican? He is a veteran. He grew up on a dairy farm. How could he change their minds? There's a lot to talk about this hour. Stephen Holden is back with us, running for Congress in District number 24. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks. It's great to be here.
And this is a bit of a drive. We were talking before the program began about just the breadth and the size of this district. It's not like Rochester, which, Congressman Joe Morelli, District 25, is Monroe County here. And it's not like Syracuse. It kind of goes into this donut around Rochester. Rochester is the donut hole, and it goes from north of Buffalo down through the Finger Lakes all the way up to the Thousand Islands. How many miles on the car do you put it?
Well, I'll give you an example of this. So on election night a few years ago, we decided to have me start out at the very beginning of the district and drive all the way to the end, hitting 12, which by now it's parts of 14 counties. Mm-hmm. And we started at 5:30 in the morning in Clayton. By the time we got to Newfane, it was 7:30 at night. And so it is to go one direction. It takes about 2 hours and 45 minutes in my car to go up. If you're going up to Alex Bay
in the Thousand Islands,
area, it probably takes about an hour and a half to go there. And then that's not talking about going south into the northern part of Steuben County and the northern part of Schuyler County, almost down near Ithaca. And then we have Letchworth State Park in that area all the way down into Wyoming County. Yeah, it's massive.
It's massive. And to me, it just looks like gerrymandering run amok. Is that correct?
I would concur on that.
Okay.
It is. And like you noticed, we noticed the challenges we had from a few years ago. But we do see opportunities this time around.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in many different ways this hour because this is a conversation not just about one congressional race, but for listeners who are curious to know what it would take for things to flip or change, or if you are perhaps hoping that Republicans can build more of a stronghold. We're going to talk about how this candidate sees some of those dynamics and what he learned in the previous congressional race that we'll talk about. I will also say that we would love to have Claudia Tenney on this program. We would love to have any member of Congress on this program. Candidates for Congress, you are all welcome. And so Representative Tenney has been invited, has not responded in the past to our invitations, has going to be invited again and again and again, and we do hope that Representative Tenney takes us up on that. She is more than welcome, and we'd be eager to have that conversation. So we're talking to Stephen Holden, and I suspect back in 2022, you knew that it was a tough situation, tough dynamics, tough voter registration rolls. And yet, it's the biggest Republican win in the state. It's a 31-point loss. Why are you doing this again?
Well, because there's a message that still needs to get out there, and there are people that still need to be represented properly. One of the things we learned, again, this is a very large and logistically challenging district. It's almost meant to grind you down. The thing that we're going to be getting out there now is that hey, look, the things that we talked about a few years ago, unfortunately, are coming to fruition now. We spoke about the potentialities of the impacts on rural communities when it comes to hospitals, when it comes to farms, when it comes to rural schools, everything to rural free delivery for the Postal Service. All those things that we said, it's going to be a tough haul and a tough sell, but unfortunately, they came to fruition now. And we don't say we told you so. We say join us. There are a lot of people that didn't get out to vote. It was a tough year for getting people out to begin with. It was just really a challenge. And the other thing that we're going to say is, hey, look, we're going to highlight those rural areas. We're also going to highlight the fact that, we have ongoing foreign policy issues right now that, for me in particular, that I have a great amount of experience with, particularly when we start talking things like Iran. So those are things that we're going to highlight that are completely different than a number of years ago. And it was also tough because, Democrats across the state we took a bath that year. It was tough. It was tough for everybody. And so we're going to take those lessons learned. We have them, and, we're going to grow off of them from there.
So let me just back up and talk a little bit more about your own background in service. That is part of what you're hinting at when you talk about Iran, when you talk about foreign policy. Because we're going to talk about Medicaid, we're going to talk about domestic politics in just a moment here. But let me just back up for listeners who may not know a little bit more about you. You're a retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel. You were born and raised on a dairy farm in Oklahoma. You have some Native American heritage, Cherokee, Cheyenne, Arapaho, Choctaw. You came to Central New York in 2006 when the Army
Correct.
sent you to Syracuse University School of Business. And you've got 3 adult children, one who has served in the U.S. Air Force Reserves. Is that right?
Yes, that's my stepson.
Oh, that's your stepson. Okay, very good. And so so that's a little bit about your own background. And when I read a little bit more on your own notes about your career, you write that in 2003, you were sent to your first deployment to Iraq, where you were involved with the capture of Saddam Hussein with the 4th Infantry. How are you involved with that operation?
So we were part of the staff financing of that particular operation. We were in Tikrit. He was captured in Adwar. So the money that went to fund all the logistical pieces of that operation is what we were a part of. So we were right there when that all happened, right there at the very beginning there. And so again, that was right there in his hometown. That's where we were located.
Okay, and what do you remember most about that time in your service and what those days were like?
It was very tough. When we went in during the initial force, we had no idea how long we were going to be there. We were told 3 months, 4 months. It was kind of unclear the operation because the Ba'ath Party fell so quickly, but then the insurgency happened. So we had to change course on the type of operation. And so it was just a lot of uncertainty. We had to do a lot of humanitarian assistance projects. We had to do a lot of security operations. It was way back in the day when it was a lot of counterinsurgency operations that were going on during that time.
And so Saddam gets captured, and people probably remember some of those scenes and what that was like. But then certainly what happens after his capture and in the power vacuum isn't exactly as then Secretary Rumsfeld and others had predicted it would happen. And Iraq has not, I don't think anybody's pining for Saddam Hussein to come back, but Iraq has not been a sort of successful, thriving state since his departure. And when you look at Iran now, Iran's a very, very different country than
Absolutely
Iraq.
is very different.
But what do you see happening there, and what concerns you?
The thing that concerns me is just how different it is and how large it is. If you remember back during the initial part of Iraq, which I've been on record to say was a mistake for us to go into to begin with, we had Saddam contained with the northern and southern fly zones. I've been on record about that, but it took about 8 to 10 division size elements to be able to contain Iraq. That's with a population of about 25 million people. Same thing, you take a look at Afghanistan, similar population. Iran is over 90 million people, or right about that. And it is just a massive country. So we don't have enough people to even secure the country if we had to put boots on the ground. And the other thing to remember with is that we won't have allies coming with us. We can't call the Australians or the Brits or the French or anybody to come along with us because it would be on our own. And that is a big concern from an operational standpoint.
Well, what's interesting about the politics of the MAGA movement is that it includes quite a lot of people who wanted no more foreign entanglement.
Correct.
And so do you encounter that a lot in your district when you travel?
Yes, I do.
And what are people telling you?
They want no part of it. And I run especially into a lot of fellow veterans who are into that. For those of us who were, like I said, the amount of deployments I did, deployed over and over and over again, they don't want any part of it because they see that excessive entanglement. Again, that's another thing that's different this time around than last time. And going to Iran would be a strategic mistake on so many different levels for some of the ones I mentioned, not to mention just what the allies would look like over there. Putin's on the side of Iran. We look at Ukraine. President Zelensky supports Israel. It's all over the place. You have what are the Saudis going to do? Because they're generally on the side there. Is India going to get involved? Those are some of the things from a strategic level that people have asked me about, and I said the work on the ground and the allies on the ground would kind of be all over the place. It would be so unclear as to where we would be going and what we'll be doing and what's the strategic outcome, yet alone having the ability to secure the areas. Okay. That's a huge problem.
So what you're describing, this, we're talking to Stephen Holden, who's running for Congress in the 24th Congressional District in New York, which is a lot of our listenership. No matter where you are listening, if you're not in Monroe County, you may be in 24. It's a huge district that goes from north of Buffalo sweeps down south of Monroe County through the Finger Lakes all the way up to the Thousand Islands. So it's a huge geographical area. And Stephen is a Democrat who ran in 2022 and lost to Claudia Tenney, running in 2026, in which the Democrats are hoping for a big midterm wave here. So some of what you're describing, I want to take your temperature on here about some of the dynamics of the electorate. You've got part of the MAGA movement, a pretty strong part, that doesn't want foreign entanglement.
Exactly.
And are not thrilled with what's going on, joining this war against Iran, bombing Iran. What's happened, to some degree, it is not like a unipolar view of Gaza. There's a lot of different views. So you've got this element, and then you have a strong love of service that tends on the American right. So there's 100 members of Congress who are veterans. 72 are Republicans. Only 28 are Democrats. So if you are able to sell this background that you have, that you are a service member, that you were part of the operation to depose Saddam Hussein, that you served this country in uniform, that you understand what that means, and yet you appreciate the concern for no more foreign entanglements. And yet when you look around, Donald Trump's approval rating himself isn't all that affected by some of this stuff. He continues to do very well with his own voters. He didn't serve, very famously. He avoided service. So why do so many Republicans and so many Trump Republicans love veterans if the president famously avoided service and is now kind of going back on so much of what he promised people about how to use the military? Why has it not broken through?
I think part of it we've got to do a better message. I know that we've kind of talked about it, talked around it a good bit. There's this whole concept of patriotism, that they think they own patriotism. Patriotism it isn't just saying I support the troops. One of the ways that you do it is by showing it, putting flesh and skin in the game, and putting money in the game. We're going to see cuts to the VA. The next thing that's coming down the pipe is the Veterans Choice Act, which is going to look to privatize the VA. And if that happens, you're only going to exacerbate the problem in a lot of these rural spaces with their hospitals, because people like me require a very specific type of health care that isn't around in at your average hospital. So the way that we have to say is saying, hey, look, if you truly do support the troops, number one, you're going to honor the commitment that you made to us when we swore an oath and came in. It's good that you put lip service to it. Now let's actually do it. Congresswoman Tenney has voted against the burn pits, a number of years ago, supporting the cuts again. And so they at the very beginning, until there was an outrage from both sides of the aisle, they were looking to cut veterans' crisis lines, for suicide prevention. There's nothing patriotic about that. There's also nothing patriotic about, putting service members in danger in places, let's say like Al Udeid over in Qatar, to the Iranians and just saying, okay, go ahead and I dare you to bomb us. And they did. There's nothing patriotic about that, about endangering service members and taking away our health care and our options. Those are the things that we have to drive home. And just this past week, I was down at the VFW in Canandaigua, and that was the attitude in there. It's like, we're done. We've seen what she's doing. They want to close these VAs. What can we do to help? So again, just in the past few days, we've seen anecdotal evidence of this.
Right. I think part of my question is none of what you just described has seemed to matter in terms of how Donald Trump has done electorally and with his voters. Maybe in Congress it's a different story, but I think what you seem to be saying is that you think we're reaching a turning point, that the public, the electorate, even in rural districts like yours, that voted more Republican than any district in the state, you think there's a turning point?
I think there is a turning point for that. This district has the second most amount of veterans in the state, second only to NY21 because of Fort Drum, because we have Watertown but not the Post. And this is something that we see a good bit out, just kind of talking generally when I tell my story. The first thing they ask is, so what about the cuts to the VA? And talking to fellow veterans. And so it's going to be interesting to see the way this plays out over the next probably 6 months on whether we start to see a turn here when veterans are getting turned away from health care, it's getting delayed, or if we continue to have problems up there with the Veterans Administration and with things within DOD in itself. It's like, okay, now we're going to have to be spending more money. Some of these cuts are going to affect them too. How has this happened in a broader space? So there's space to move there that we may have not had before. And I know, not just for myself, I know that there are other people who are running, other veterans who are going to be running, who are making this case. They're saying, hey, look, here's how we're going to break through on this, because I think it's something we can, but it's been just kind of a general messaging issue to do that. That's the problem. We're going to start to see that. I think a lot more here in the next probably about 6 months.
So tell me what kind of Democratic heroes you have. Who are your favorite Democrats on the scene right now?
Some of my favorite Democrats on the scene right now, it's not really a Democrat. I mean, I've always been a fan of Bernie Sanders, just simply because, he's out there and he's telling the truth about the economic condition of America. He's going out into rural spaces and being welcomed with open arms in a lot of places. And, and I understand the divisions we have within the party and those particular things. But when we're talking about healthcare, when we're talking about the cost of living and a living wage and economic stability, which is, I think, something that happened in the last election, we really didn't talk to that, to the level that we did, to the economic anxiety. I like the way that message comes over. so that right now is kind of one of my heroes out there, has been for a long time. On the other side, coming from rural spaces, I'm a fan of Andy Beshear in Kentucky. Understanding that background, understanding being blue and red spaces. It's something that
Governor of Kentucky, a Democrat. Kentucky, of course, very famously Democratic. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
And I think, team, fact check me real quick on this. I think I saw an Andy Beshear approval rating this weekend. He's at like 68-25 approve. It's like a 40+ point approval rating.
And his father was the governor of Kentucky before that, and I know when President Biden stepped aside, he was one of the people on the short list they were looking at to replace, and on the short list for VP as well.
And presidential contenders in 26. Or 28, I should say.
Exactly. The third one I want to talk about is a candidate very similar to me, and that is Tim Walz. Veteran, comes from rural America, kind of looks like your next door neighbor. Kind of that guy. Almost like what the old term you call a plains populist back in the day. So kind of amongst those three are kind of where I take my ideas.
Okay, and so let me read to you something that the progressive writer Matthew Iglesias said last week. Iglesias is looking at the electorate on how Democrats can win in 2026. And part of what he is describing in what I'm about to read is his view that when people talk about what do Democrats need to do? What do they need to say? He says it depends on where you are. Because if you're in a very rural district and you're trying to flip it, your approach has to be different. So, because somebody had pointed to Rudolph Giuliani, there's a lot of talk about Mamdani in New York City. There's a lot of talk about, New York City is very left. And Iglesias points out that, Rudy Giuliani was a Republican. Michael Bloomberg. I mean, there's been a long history of Republicans winning in New York City.
Yes, there has.
But he says the following. He says, Giuliani, of course, was progressive on immigration and abortion and gay rights, which is how he could win as a Republican in New York City. Democrats should try the same strategy in the opposite direction to be viable in Ohio, Iowa, Texas, Kansas, Florida, and rural districts. So what he's saying is on pocketbook issues, like you're talking about with Bernie Sanders, you're where you need to be. He says on social issues, you need to get more conservative to reach people, whether it's immigration, abortion, gay rights, et cetera. What do you make of that?
Well, it's again, there aren't really cookie cutters for certain areas. I'll give you here for example, look in this district on immigration. That this is a huge issue. We have the Batavia Detention Center. We also have the Women's Detention Center in Niagara County. And Tom Homan is from this district. He's from up in Jefferson County. Immigration is starting to turn into a hot button issue here. But it's turning into an issue in a way that could turn toward us, because all of a sudden you have farmers that are looking around. Where's my workforce now? Where are they? They're gone. Or you have in places not in the district but close, roofing crews getting disappeared off the street for issues like that. So you're right. You have to tailor it in. The pocketbook issues is kind of like I talked about with Bernie. For other issues, that's where you look to somebody like Andy Beshear, what he's been able to do in places like Kentucky, to where you have to fit the puzzle pieces in. So when you define someone in one particular direction or the other, you have to take a look at it on a holistic sense.
Yeah, no, I certainly understand. And by the way, I'm not asking you as a candidate for Congress, what's going to work? So what should I adopt?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be you. I get it. I think what Iglesias is saying, the party should be picking candidates strategically based on the district makeup. And, I got an email from Charles saying, hey, if the door swings both ways. He's talking about Harry Bronson's assembly district and how it's set up. And no one is saying that gerrymandering only helps Democrats or only helps Republicans. I mean, they're very good. The parties are very good at working together to protect their own interests and setting up districts where they are very, very likely to have an electoral advantage.
Correct.
That's the only observation I'm making here. But kind of pursuing a little bit more your thoughts on So take immigration. I take your point that it's not just are you more right or are you more left? It is functionally what's going on with ICE could very soon, especially in the Finger Lakes region, they're going to have apple orchards, they're going to have grape harvest, they're going to have major harvest issues.
Correct.
And you may see crews not there, and you're going to see pretty conservative areas affected in ways that you think will maybe move some people's opinions?
Yes, because again, we talk a lot about second, third order effects. So if that crew's not there, within a business, your biggest cost center is labor. So if I don't have the crews there, to be able to pick the apples, pick the grapes, to go milk the cattle, whatever it is to work that operation, now I'm going to have to pay more, and I'm going to pass that cost on to you. Well, you take this on top of the fact of the cuts to things like SNAP, which is going to affect this district in a large way, because this district has, a childhood poverty problem. Okay, maybe those items aren't going to be there. They're going to cost a lot more, and it's going to start hitting people's pocketbooks. So it's a second and third order effect where it might start as a social issue, but then it'll turn into an economic issue.
I hear that. Let me ask you in a different way. Do you think the Biden administration did a poor job of securing the southern border?
I think it could have been done a lot better. And I think that's part of the problem that came to fruition last cycle, is that, it's like the economic issues. Whatever that the reality was, the people didn't feel that that's what it was. So we need to do, and oh, by the way, there was a border bill that was out there, a bipartisan border bill.
Was someone from your native Oklahoma part of it?
With Senator James Langford, who is not confused for being a liberal in any stretch of the man who was a Baptist preacher, was part of the negotiation for that, was killed by the Trump administration. That's something that, we talked about it some, but it wasn't put out there. So is there some things to blame on both sides? Yes, absolutely. And that was not something that we're going to shy away from. Yes, we have to secure our borders. That we absolutely do. However, it's how you're addressing the problem, and the way it's being addressed right now is getting into overreach is a bit of with the 3,000 per day quota that Stephen Miller for deportations that Stephen Miller's talking about. That's going beyond the pale. I think even for people who are immigration hawks.
I've talked to a lot of Democrats since last November who feel like what the Trump campaign did really well was take certain culture war hot button issues, inflate them, and drown the conversation.
Yes.
And for example, trans sports and trans issues, and outsize those issues and make the campaign focus on them. And that hurt the Democratic Party. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely do. And it's part of a greater strategy of trying to divide the Democratic electorate. You've seen, not this past cycle, but in 22 and some off-year elections, as an anecdotal evidence, in Michigan, around the Dearborn area, large Muslim population, Republicans inflated trans issues. Vote shares went down. We see the division within the Democratic Party between two Democratic voting bases, Jewish Americans and Muslim Americans, dividing over Gaza, inflating these issues with women's rights folks versus trans rights folks, trying to divide a wedge to either siphon off votes or depress votes, is kind of some of the things we've been seeing on a grander, broader scale across not just the district, but across the country.
So you ran for Congress in 2022. You're running for Congress in 2026. How many doors do you think you've knocked on? How many households have you visited?
Thousands? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's either for myself or other candidates I'll be knocking for and stuff like that to help out. Because, it's not just winning up here at the top, but it's building a bench to where we have people who will run for, Assembly, Senate,
Yeah.
starting off at that level, which is something that Republicans have done for a very long time in these spaces, is they've built a bench.
They've done really well.
They've done really well at it.
Yeah.
So if one of us were to win, there's going to be a bench of probably 20 Republicans that'll want to come after you, that, and it'll just keep coming. So we have to buttress that back by rebuilding our own spaces out here.
So in all the thousands of doors you've knocked on campaigning for Congress, how many times have people asked you about trans athletes and trans sports issues?
Unless they were part of that community and wanting to ensure that they're protected, hardly any. I would say most people
hasn't come up.
No, it's more like, hey, you're a veteran. Hey, what's your thoughts on whatever's going on in whatever part of the world?
How many times do people ask about Medicaid?
A lot.
A lot.
And that's where we get back to this.
They're hospitals.
They're hospitals. My team gave me the information that with this, and I'm using air quotes for people that see this big, beautiful bill, right now that there are 5 hospitals in the district that could potentially close. Remiss. I know there's Lockport, there's Alex Bay, there's Watertown, there's Newark, and I believe one in Oswego that would close.
That will close?
That would
could close.
Could close. Could close is the better word.
I don't think it's imminent. I mean, I certainly understand the pressures.
Yeah, it's because it's the amount of Medicaid reimbursements that they get.
Okay.
And the elasticity is going to put, I should put it this way, it's going to put them in jeopardy at that particular point. That will then, again, that is compounded again, like if you close veteran centers, now you're going to have people that are going to also be needing that health care. And it's going to compound one on top of the other. And that's, again, where these issues are going to spread. Because, again, one of the things that President Trump campaigned on was, I'm not going to cut Medicare and Medicaid. He made it as a point of making a differentiation between he and Ron DeSantis back in the Republican primaries. He wants to cut it. I'll protect it. Now he didn't. It's kind of like the foreign wars thing. They said one thing, did another, and people are like waking up to this now and going, or, hey, I'm going to protect veterans benefits, but now they're looking potentially.
That's why you believe the door is open to winning this time.
I absolutely do. Even with the amounts and the deficit that I lost by before, there's going to be a sea change that's out there within within this. And I'll give a couple cases where we see this anecdotally where Republicans believe they're in trouble. In Wisconsin, you had Congressman Van Orden, MAGA, there at January 6th, petitioning the Democratic governor of Wisconsin for relief in his rural area. He knew it was bad. You also had there is something that was sent to me by a friend of mine back in Oklahoma, where there are Republican state legislators that are talking to the mayor of Tulsa, who's a Democrat. Can you help us out? So we're seeing Republicans hitting the panic button, going, wait a minute here. We're in some trouble because you're going when Medicare payments, which, by the way, don't affect until after the next midterms. And this is where we as Democrats have to be vocal and say, it's coming now. Do not be fooled by this. It's the same thing happened with the Trump tax bill, back in 2018. Don't be fooled.
Republicans and Democrats love to schedule changes to benefits to hit after elections. And it's not just Republicans who do it, but I take the point that it's going to be a harder sell if certain benefit changes are going to happen after November 2026. I'm late for my only break of the hour. Kathy in Monroe County, we're going to take your phone call after this break. I've got a couple of emails to read. Stephen Holden is running for Congress. He ran in 2022, and he's running against Claudia Tenney, the Republican incumbent, who is also invited on this program. Really, any day that she wants to make it work, we will find a way to make it work. All members of Congress are invited. And so we're talking to Stephen Holden about what Democrats have to do to reach voters in districts where they lost in 2022, 2024. What changes next year? We'll take that break. We'll come back, take your phone calls and emails next.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from Bob Johnson Auto Group, proud supporter of Connections with Evan Dawson. Believing an informed public makes for a stronger community. BobJohnsonAutoGroup.com. And Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield, believing that everyone deserves to be cared for and to live well. Through community investments, partnerships, and education, Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield is working to address health inequities. More at excellusbcbs.com.
This is Connections. I'm Evan Dawson. If my guest this hour wins next November, not this November, 2026 in the midterms, it will be a national story. Stephen Holden's win in 2026 would be heralded across the country as Democrat flips the biggest Republican district from just 4 years ago. It would be a huge story. And when you have a tens of thousands of voter roll registration disadvantage, it's a big task. But Stephen is explaining why the Democratic Party and why he thinks things are ripe for a change this time around. And so he is giving it a second shot, especially considering what the big beautiful bill is doing and what voters are saying to him. And let's take some feedback from listeners. This is Kathy in Monroe County. Hey, Kathy, go ahead. Kathy, are you there? I've got her in. Hey, maybe she's on mute. Let's do this. I'm going to put Kathy back on hold, and we'll get Jack in Greece. Hey, Kathy, maybe we talk to our staff. We'll get Kathy there, and let's get Jack next in Greece. Hey, Jack, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Evan. Thanks.
Yep.
I apologize. I don't remember the name of the fellow that's running.
Stephen Holden.
You don't represent Stephen. Hi, Stephen.
Hi.
You wouldn't represent my district. I live in the town of Greece.
No, that's Joe Morelli.
Right. My question has more to do with the district that you're looking to win over. The best as I understand it is extremely rural. Driven, many of the people that I know that I've run into and had discussions with tend to be extremely conservative, ideologically driven in a lot of cases, maybe a very strong anti-gay strain against gay marriage, much to do with the label. A lot of Democrats at the national level are embracing the label Democratic Socialist. The term socialist, people immediately run to and say that's communism. And how do you? I mean, I get it. Your points are well taken on, and I think the country's extremely wrong in terms of isolation. Those are winning arguments in my book. But I got to be honest with you. In a district that you're looking at, I mean, there's an awful lot of Trump flags that are waving around, and I don't even listen to you. I'm curious what you're really hearing on the ground that you try and win over.
Thank you, Jack. Go ahead, Stephen.
So thanks you, Jack. Thank you for that question. And that's something we get a lot. So it's a few things. One, we really tap into my personal background. I come from rural America. Most of my family back in Oklahoma is MAGA. I was raised in an evangelical household in Oklahoma. I understand where they're coming from. So we have to tailor our message.
You grew up in a dairy farm?
Yes, I did.
Milking cows? Actually milking cows?
Yes.
Okay.
I was in the FFA and the 4-H as well.
Okay.
And for people that don't know what that is, that's the Future Farmers of America.
Indeed.
And I was an officer in that. But I've grown up in these spaces. I know last time on, Evan, we talked about, living in red spaces. And it's like, when people see me or people talk to me, they look to me and go, "You're a Democrat? You look like you're off the set of Yellowstone."
Okay, so you lead with your background, but then what do you say when someone says, "Okay, well, my values are conservative. Where do we align?"
Well, and then I start talking about my personal experiences and personal stories. I start talking about being raised around the dinner table in rural America, going to church on Sunday mornings, talking about how, even if we disagree, faith is something that's very important to me. I very strongly believe in particularly like Matthew 25, of taking care of the least of these. And whereas we might disagree in those particular things, at the end of the day, we want a better community. We want our better lives for our children and our grandchildren. We want them to come back home. And we really lead with that. There's some things that you're never going to be able to reach people on just because of a cultural divide. But if you lead with the fact that I understand where you're coming from, I'm not going to sit and denigrate you for your views. I understand why you have those views. I have family that have those views. But you know what? At the end of the day, we want to make your lives better. And that's really where we come from.
Jack is saying he thinks in districts like yours, the Mamdanis of the world really wouldn't play. I mean, are you a Mamdani Democrat or are you?
So here's the thing. I like the economic policies. When we talk about affordable housing, when we talk about health care, when we're talking about making life more affordable for people, regardless if that's Zoran Mondami's positioning, those are sorts of things that can sell anywhere. Some of the other things that are said, we have to take a look at them. I mean, especially here versus the city. But if again, it kind of goes back to Bernie on those sorts of things. We're talking about securing health care. We're talking about livable wages. We're talking unions that are there, because there are many places in this district where you have union membership, but they vote Republican. And why does that happen? And some of them over and other social issues, particularly guns, whether it's gay and trans rights. That's like, okay, I support my union, but I don't support this. And that's kind of where we go with it.
Let me get back to your phone. I see the phone continuing to ring for Stephen Holden. So let me get back to your phone calls. And this is Jamie in Ontario County. Hey, Jamie, go ahead.
Hi, Steve. I just had a quick question for you. I'm raising an 8-year-old daughter out here in Ontario County, and she's probably going to lose her Medicaid health insurance, which my representative was on TV dancing about it after passing this bill. But my main question for you is, Representative Claudia Tenney has refused to hold a town hall for her constituents. Her last one was in April of 2023. I have been very active in the district demanding that my representative hold a town hall. I've organized many protests, and I'm trying to actually organize a coalition to go to Washington, D.C., because she refuses to meet with her constituents. Will you commit to holding regular town halls for your constituents so you can hear our voices and accurately represent us in Washington, D.C.?
Thank you, Jamie. Go ahead, Stephen.
Absolutely, 100%. And it doesn't matter where they are, because, and I've been to some of these town halls where, in lieu of Congresswoman Tenney, they have a cardboard cutout of her standing there while we were talking about, various issues, particularly a lot of them been here recently, healthcare. Absolutely 100%. If you're not willing to get out there and actually talk to the people you represent, even if they disagree with you, you have to be able and be present in the district. You have to have skin in the game, no matter where that is here in the district.
So that's a yes. You will do that.
Absolutely, okay. 100%.
Thank you, Jamie. Joel wants to know where you are on nuclear energy.
So I do support nuclear energy, and that's a big thing here because over in Oswego County we do have nuclear power plants. But it needs to be safe and 100%.
Should we do new nuclear projects?
I'm for more clean energy, for more green energy projects to be done.
You prefer solar and wind?
I prefer solar and wind over that. But I also do understand the nuclear issue over in Oswego County.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't want to shut down what's going on?
I do not want to shut down what's going on. But when I ran last time, I actually sat down with a nuclear expert from over in Oswego County who talked about that issues and ensured to me, and I spoke to other environmental folks within the district, they were good with that. So I had to get a temperature on the ground for that one.
Preston writes in to say he wants to put in a vote for Alyssa Slotkin, the senator from Michigan, as one of the best communicators in the Democratic Party right now. I don't know if you know Senator Slotkin.
I know she also spent a good bit of time in DOD. So,
okay, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So Preston wants us to be thinking about Slotkin. Two different Johns. I'll take an email and then a phone call. John emails to say, Evan, you had the candidate talking about trans issues and then you didn't ask the question. Can you ask if the candidate supports trans girls and women playing in girls' sports? That's from John.
Okay, so here's the point on that. I support the idea that it has to be decided at the local level. So for example, within the NCAA, they require a period of time with hormone replacement and treatment before they become eligible to be able to do that. So there isn't an advantage. However, we do not need to be exclusionary when it comes to that, but we have to be smart about it. So there's going to have to be some things done, but completely eliminating people from doing that is, with saying, no, you can never do it, is not something that I would support.
But it sounds like, tell me if I'm wrong, you're saying that a trans boy or a trans man who has not had any sort of medical intervention, you'd be hesitant to them playing just in a girl sport.
Yeah,
or a women's sport.
I would be hesitant to that because I don't want there to be a disadvantage, but I understand that when you start to go through the hormone replacement process, which is what the NCAA does.
So then maybe that changes it.
That would change things right together. Right there.
All right, different John, I think. This is John in Rochester. Hi, John. Go ahead.
Hi. It is twice as efficient to say ugly as beautiful. So we have a disgusting abomination that can be called one big ugly bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so John wants to argue for it to be the big ugly bill. I don't. That will be up to each individual. I think Stephen is betting that more people will see it that way.
Yes. We tend to call it ugly within our circles here, not just within our campaign, but within our support base and everything. We call it the big ugly bill.
Jay on YouTube, thank you, Stephen, for stepping up and running. T-Man on YouTube met Stephen at a 5 and 20 Alliance event.
Yes.
Says great meetup, and I would encourage Stephen meet more people more often. So
yes, and we absolutely plan on it. We're going to be everywhere in the district, all 14 counties. It's kind of managing time. It's just being able to get to all places, but we absolutely are. We've been to all 14, and we look forward to coming back again.
This is Daryl next on the phone. Hey, Daryl, go ahead. Do we have Daryl? Line 4. Hey, Daryl. Hey, Daryl. I can hear something. Okay. I mean, we've had some issues. If you're on mute, try not to get on mute here. Greg in San Diego is next. Hey, Greg, go ahead.
Hi. We have to wait till the chickens come home to roost. 6 months from now, a year from now, a whole lot of people are going to be affected by the cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP. People are leaving universities because they feel they don't have the right to freedom of speech. The border is an issue that will get even more difficult. The troubles in Texas, the floods, FEMA is not able to respond because of the cuts earlier this year. The National Weather Service was not able to forecast that storm in time to save lives. There is a mountain of issues that Democrats, they could put all 24 in a hat, pick any one of them out. Finally, today in Washington, D.C.
Oh, we lost you, Greg. I lost Greg for a second.
Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Greg. Yep, that was my fault. Go ahead.
Last thing, today in Washington, D.C., Netanyahu and Trump are talking. What is going to happen regarding war? So those issues and many more have yet to be determined, and how they will affect people in this country and how much will they suffer. Thank you.
Greg, thank you for the phone call. And this leads to our last 90 seconds, so that's a good lead-in to give Stephen Holden some time for some final thoughts here. I mean, if we had Claudia Tenney on this program, the Republican incumbent, which she is invited any time, I suspect she would say, you're overblowing the big, beautiful bill's effects. It is not going to take that many people off Medicaid. It is not going to hurt that many people's food stamps. That this is, you're just trying to create this shadow that's in the dark that people are scared of, and that you're hyping it up for electoral advantage. So Greg is saying, just wait and see. and people will feel it. Where are you? And final thoughts from you.
So, Evan, that gets back to what I was talking about earlier about the second order and third order effects. And let's see where things are in that 6 month amount of time that Greg's talking about. Because you're going to start to see the compounding of the problems. Again, we have the hospitals, we have, a few hospitals that could be in jeopardy. Compound the veteran cuts on top of that, compounding the immigration and what that's going to do for food production within the district and around the country, compounding that again with the SNAP cuts. We're going to start to see things one building off of the other. And with national security, what's going to happen in the Middle East? Sometimes when you open Pandora's box, it's hard to put it back in, especially in that part of the world. As someone who's been on three sides of Iran from three different areas. So it may not be here right at the moment. I know the base is really energized about it, but we'll see where this is going here in a few months.
Stephen Holden is running for Congress in New York District number 24. It starts in the west to the north of Buffalo, up against the lake. It butts down around Monroe County, through the Finger Lakes, and then north all the way up to the Thousand Islands. It's a huge district, and he's got a big voter registration disadvantage, but he's given it another shot. His opponent, Claudia Tenney, is going to be invited on this program, and I appreciate your time. Thank you for making the time for this program.
Thank you very much, Evan. It's always a pleasure.
And he is joining us in studio. It's a huge district. I have no idea how he even got here. We've got more connections coming up here in just a minute.
Especially since today's my wife's birthday.
Oh, there you go. Happy birthday. More connections coming up.
Thank you.
This program is a production of WXXI Public Radio. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of this station, its staff, management, or underwriters. The broadcast is meant for the private use of our audience. Any rebroadcast or use in another medium without expressed written consent of WXXI is strictly prohibited. Connections with Evan Dawson is available as a podcast. Just click on the Connections link at WXXInews.org.
Support for your public radio station comes from our members and from the Cornhill Arts Festival, presented by ESL Federal Credit Union, featuring over 350 artists, the Fairy Houses Tour, and the Emerging Artists Expo, Saturday and Sunday, July 12th and 13th. Learn more at cornhillartsfestival.com. And DSP shows presenting the Swell season with Glenn Hansard and Marketa Irglova in their North American Tour 2025, Wednesday, July 23rd at Kodak Center. Tickets available at dspshows.com.